Hello, I'm Father Bart Giger, and welcome to week 4 of Boston College's 9-week novena using the letters of St. Ignatius Loyola for prayer and reflection. Our theme this week is Ignatius's advice on how to speak with, dialogue with, deal with other human beings. And his advice on this matter, again, flows very naturally from that first principle and foundation we discussed earlier, the bedrock, the heart of his spirituality, which is the dedication to the greater glory of God. In other words, all else being equal, when you have 2 or more good options in front of you in the service of God, try to choose that option which you believe is going to edify the greater number of people, to bring the greater number of people closer to God over the course of the long haul. Okay, and to really illustrate this point, there's a great story about Ignatius that, he was investigated no less than 11 times during his life by the Inquisition for possible heresy. And if he had ever been convicted, he was exonerated all 11 times. But if he had ever been convicted, he could have been silenced, he could have been jailed, worst case scenario, he could have been burned at the stake. And his enemies were constantly reporting him to the Inquisition, accusing him of heresy, all right? Some of them were concerned because Ignatius did not have a theology degree when he first started preaching to other people and giving them the spiritual exercises. And so they were really afraid that he didn't even understand Catholic doctrine to begin with, so who is he to be teaching it to others? And then others were afraid, there's any number of heresies running around at this time, like the Illuminati, and so many others were afraid that Ignatius was a closet heretic, a closet Illuminato, for example. And so he's investigated 11 times, but by about the 6th or the 7th time, the inquisitors came to Ignatius and they said, look, Ignatius, someone has reported you to us for heresy. They've asked us to investigate you. But we've got good news for you. We've been through this before any number of times. We've done this pony show before. We already know that you're innocent, so we're not even going to bother investigating you. We're going to let it slide. And to their amazement, Ignatius said to the inquisitors, no, I want you to investigate me. I want you to interview anybody you need to interview. I want you to get it recorded, and then I want a formal document attesting to my innocence drawn up, and then I want that document plastered all over the city so everyone can see it. Well, the poor inquisitors, that's a tremendous amount of paperwork and time for them and money, that kind of an investigation. So they dropped their heads and they said, Ignatius, please don't ask us to do that. And he said, no, I have to do this. I have to do this for the greater glory of God. Now, why is that? Why did he take that approach? Well, when faced with a false accusation, Ignatius had 3 or 4 legitimate possibilities in terms of a response, all of which would have been legitimate from a Christian spiritual point of view. He might have said, look, I know that I'm innocent, but I'm simply going to accept these false charges and this calumny with humility and offer it up to God as a gesture of humility. Okay. St. Teresa of Avila, for example, one of the greatest saints of the 16th century, who lived just a little bit later than Ignatius, she once said, whenever I'm accused of something that I didn't do, I don't say anything. I remain silent. I don't defend myself because I figure at some point in the past, I did something wrong that I did get away with. So she said, this only evens it out. Okay. So, that's a legitimate way to approach it. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But Ignatius didn't take that route. Or he could have tried to take the moral high road and say, these are petty people accusing me with petty grievances who don't really understand the beauty of what I'm trying to do here. And so I'm going to simply ignore them. I'm going to ignore their accusations and hope that they go away after a while. Okay. Well, I'm not going to drop myself down to their level. Well, again, that's possibly a legitimate approach to take, and people certainly have taken that kind of approach in the past. Or Ignatius could have said, well, I'm going to countersue my critics, maybe intimidate them into, trying to prosecute me again. I'll just drag all of their dirty laundry out of the closet, okay? And people have taken that approach, right? And perhaps that's legitimate as well. But what he did was, he says, I want you to take their arguments seriously. I want you to drag their arguments into the light for everyone to see. I want you to see I want people to see my response, okay? So that in the end, everybody sees the truth of what I'm trying to do here. Because if we are serious, Ignatius is saying, if I am serious about trying to edify as many people as possible, then remaining silent is not an option for me. I have to enter into dialogue with my accusers, first of all, because I respect my accusers. I take them seriously. I want them to be on my side. They're part of that greater number of people out there that I'm trying to help. And so in what better way can I do that than to engage their arguments and to take them seriously? Okay? And then, of course, by engaging their arguments, I also clear away the hesitations or the doubts of the general public who might be tempted not to take me seriously because of all these accusations circling around me. I have to make sure that I'm cleared so that all the people in the city realize that I'm innocent. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to serve that greater number, the greater glory. Okay. So notice how his commitment to the greater glory of God, the more universal good, has a very specific consequence for whether he interacts with other people and how he interacts with other people. Okay. You know, a great movie in this regard, I love movies, and one of my favorites, which came out about 25 years ago, was The American President with Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. And Michael Douglas plays a first-term widowed United States president who's very popular. And he starts dating a woman while he's in the White House. And his political enemies, in order to undermine him, start falsely accusing her of all kinds of things. Right? And much to the amazement of the entire staff of the White House, the president refuses to come to his girlfriend's defense because he says, you know, these are petty people doing slimy things. You know, people are going to be able to see the sliminess, what they're doing. And so I'm going to take the moral high road, and I'm not going to dignify their accusations with a response. Okay. And the White House staff says to him, yeah, sir, we don't really think that's a good idea. You know? But he insists. But then what happens is that over the course of the movie, his popularity, his ratings do start dropping because people assume that by his silence, there must be something true to what his enemies are saying. Okay. So that finally, by the end of the film, he realizes that if he's going to love this woman, and if he's going to serve the greater good by remaining president, serving the good of the American people, he has to, so to speak, get his knuckles dirty. He's got to wade into the muck and meet his accusers where they are and engage them and take them seriously. Okay? And so Ignatius here, in this letter that he writes in 1546 to 3 Jesuits who are going to the Council of Trent. And you remember that the Council of Trent was the council of Catholic bishops that was summoned in response to the Protestant Reformation, which is really kicked off. It's in full swing now. And so, as you can imagine, at the council, there is going to be a tremendous amount of tension between the Catholic bishops. Some of them are going to be more sympathetic to the Protestant reforms than others will be. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of tension between the bishops, and the Jesuits have been invited to this council in order to be theological consultants and advisors to these bishops. Okay? And so Ignatius is going to give these Jesuits advice on, first of all, how to speak to the bishops at the council, right? And the importance of trying to remain, for just one example of this piece of advice, is that you want to make it very clear that you are listening respectfully to all points of view, and that you are trying to appear as balanced as possible in the way that you interact with all of these bishops, because you are going to be able to sway the greater number of minds and hearts if you take that approach. Okay. And then in the second part of the letter, Ignatius gives advice to the Jesuits about how they engage the people in the city. This harkens back to that first letter you remember we looked at when he gives that 3 sections of advice, all right, to the Jesuits working in Ferrara, The same thing here. Ignatius gives advice for how to deal with the bishops and how to talk to them in a way that will win the bishops over. The Jesuits will win the confidence of the bishops by their manner of speaking with them. And so in the second part of Ignatius's letter, he's going to talk about how to engage the people of the city, okay, and how to win their minds and hearts. And then again, the third part of the letter, as before, it's how the Jesuits take care of themselves, that self-care. How do they maintain their own enthusiasm for what they're doing, and how they support each other. And just like in that first letter we saw, in this letter, Ignatius is going to explicitly say right there in the middle of the letter, so take note, we're doing all of this in order to serve the greater glory of God. Okay. So for your prayer and reflection this week, I would invite you to bring those questions to mind. And that is, do I engage other people with respect? Do I take them seriously? Because I want to win them over. I want us to be on the same side. I want us to be on the same team. And so engaging someone in that kind of dialogue, not being dismissive, is a wonderful gesture of love. It's a lot of work. It's a big challenge, right? And then also, am I deliberate in the way that I engage with people? Have I given much thought to my manner of speech, how well I listen? Do I react before I reflect? Or do I make it clear that when I'm listening to them, that I'm really processing what they're saying before I say something back in response? And so for Ignatius, Jesuits were supposed to be very practiced, very deliberate in the way that they speak with others. We pray for grace from God, of course. Ultimately, everything is grace. But then also skills, practice, learning are very important as well. And we need to bring that to the table. Okay, God bless you, and I will see you next week.